Welcome back to Bite Size Magic. My name is Zach, and today I'm sitting down with the founder of PlayNice, Michael Schmidt, to talk about how this website/app is really making waves in the cEDH community and how you can use it to become a better player. Michael is a part of our cEDH community. They play Rogside really well. I met them at Breach the Bay and we exchanged info, and I was super pumped to be able to talk about PlayNice. I was really excited to talk about it because I use this tool so much in coaching. I really find that if you can record your games, you have a much better idea of where things are going right and where things are going wrong.
I wanted to talk to you guys real quick about some tournaments that we're going to be going to in the very near future. The Siege! This is going to be June 13 and 14 in Colorado. We're going to be out in Thornton, Colorado, near the Denver area at the Doubletree Castle. By the way, it's a castle. That's pretty cool. I actually didn't think I was going to go to this event, but recently I got invited, and huge thank you to the tournament organizers for helping me get out there. Really appreciate them, and I want to do my best to get everyone I know out to the Siege. So if you're not already registered, make sure to go check this out. Again, this is going to be in a castle, and there's some really cool fun stuff in association. This is going to be hosted by MTG Basics, Critical EDH, and Level Several Games. They're going to be raffling off Gaia's Cradles. There's going to be a 10K guaranteed prize pool. It's $100 entry and 100% proxy friendly, which we love out here in Bite Size Magic. Make sure to check this out. I think this is going to be a huge event. I would not be surprised if this is a diamond or will be a diamond within a few days. But this is, again, June 13 and 14. I will be there. I'm freaking pumped. I love Colorado tournaments. I love Colorado players. Super fun to play with them, as always. I was at Mortal Kombat last year, and I'm glad I get to run it back for the Siege this year. So go check this out. Really phenomenal tournament run by some of the best people in this game. See you there.
Make sure to stick around until the end of the video to hear about this week's giveaway and see how you could win a proxy deck for free. All right, let's jump into the video.
All right, welcome back to Bite Size Magic. My name is Zach, and today I have Michael from PlayNice with me today. PlayNice is one of the best tools in the cEDH community when it relates to data tracking, understanding how your deck is playing against other decks in the meta, mulligans, etc. We're going to get into all of that today and more. But Michael, thank you for joining me. Why don't you just say hi and introduce yourself and chat about what you do?
Sure. Hi, I'm happy to be here. My name is Michael Schmidt. I'm one of the two people behind PlayNiceMTG. I'm primarily known for playing Rogsai. I love playing Rogsai, so that's what I do. It's like, it's one of those decks where it's like the people who love playing Rogsai are like hardcore on Rogsai.
Yeah.
But anyway, my background's in tech, which is one of the reasons why we created PlayNice. I have a business partner, Toka, who's more on the casual side, which is great because, I'm sitting primarily in the cEDH space. And that way we can also, kind of look at what's happening on the casual side and hopefully get some of the casual players interested in tracking their games data.
Nice. Yeah. That's one thing that I think is somewhat overlooked in cEDH is that casual EDH is the same format as cEDH, and we are less than 1% of EDH overall. And so if we can start to, just like new players start to scale up in cEDH and become better and become great players, if we can start to look at casual players and say, hey, you guys can play tournaments too. You don't need to necessarily play cEDH, but you could do all this stuff. You can track your data. I think it's going to create a more holistic and wholesome environment. And maybe we see the whole cEDH community grow rapidly through that. So that's a topic for another day, but I really like that we focused on that with PlayNice.
Yeah.
So for those who've never heard of PlayNice, what is it? And, why was the tool created? What are we talking about today? And why is it so important?
Yeah, so in short, it's basically a tool for tracking both casual and competitive Commander games for Magic the Gathering. It's the primary format that we're focusing on now. At some point in the future, we'll probably start tracking other formats, but right now it's very like EDH and cEDH focused.
Gotcha.
The main purpose of the service is basically to analyze your games and provide you with a ton of statistics that can hopefully result in you becoming a better player, or at least give you like a better understanding of why your win rate sucks, why you're not winning the games that you should be winning.
Right.
So we also think that it's a really good tool for coaches because it allows you to measure the progress of the people that you're coaching. So Are they not mulliganing aggressively enough? Are they keeping bad opening hands? Are there some matchups to just keep kicking their ass over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of questions that we're trying to answer with the data that we get in PlayNice.
Yeah, I love it. I use PlayNice all the time with all clients. I think tracking is something that is pretty imperative, especially when you're getting going. And in addition, when you're doing coaching, because you want to see that when you're doing coaching, it's working And having data that can sort of back that up is really useful. In addition, having the mulligans is something that I think is a little over-focused on when it comes to coaching. I know a lot of people who've done coaching before have said like, oh, I just did mulligans for an hour and I didn't feel like I learned all that much. And that's reasonable because that's like one part of a very complex game. But that being said, mulliganing correctly is super important. And so it's a great thing to focus on in some aspect in coaching sessions, if not in perpetuity for the whole thing. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, and on that point, I think it's also like you can't just look at mulliganing and opening hands as like its own thing. It's like all part of the connected data that's around the game. Because an opening hand gets less relevant the longer the game goes.
Exactly.
Like if you're a Rockside player trying to push on turn 2, then mulliganing is incredibly important because you will literally only have drawn like 2 more cards apart from the ones that you kept in your opening hand. So if that mulligan, the opening hand that you kept, is terrible, it's not going to allow you to do that. Whereas if you're playing like a mid-range deck or something like that, that's happily deploying the value engine and then trying to push on like turn 4, turn 5, where you've drawn the 10 cards off Ristic, or you have all the treasures from the Tithe, or any of those things, then the opening hand becomes less relevant because there's so many other factors that influence it. So, but I think you have a very fair point.
Yeah, I think about opening hand theory, like you have to look at it so differently for a lot of different decks. A lot of something Freedom Waffles talked about, and I think a lot of people now resonate with, is you really want to plan with your opening hand. And the more mid-range your deck is, the more loose that plan can be. For example, like you're on Rogsai and you absolutely need a game plan for how to win the game in the first 2 to 3 turns max.
Yes.
Yeah. If I'm playing something like a Rogashai or a Blue Farm, I really can narrow into just a much more simple game plan, i.e. Ristic Study, and how to accomplish that in the first 2 turns of the game, instead of I need to put this together to get that, and I have the Nas. And anyway, it's just interesting to look at across decks. Okay, so you talked a little bit about you and your partner and who you guys are and where you come from, but why was the tool actually created? Why did you guys get together and decide we want to have this functionality for the community and for ourselves?
Yeah, so funnily enough, I come from the comic book world. That's what I've been into. That's been like my money pit hobby for, so very long. So I've always kind of resisted going into Magic the Gathering because I was like, I don't need another money pit to sink, things into.
Yeah.
But then finally during COVID, my friend Toka, he kept pushing me. He was like, you need to start playing Magic. It's super fun. There's spell table. We can play online and all that sort of stuff. And then I actually got into it and I immediately went down the rabbit hole. I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
This is so much fun. It's like the collectability aspect of it triggered me entirely, and the playability aspect of it. I just loved it from the moment we started playing.
Yeah.
So Toka, my friend, and business partner here, he taught me how to play Commander, which is pretty much the worst format to learn Magic the Gathering.
No one knows what the rules are in casual game.
Any 1v1 format would have been so much better. But that's the format that he was playing. So he taught me that. And I played casual like Commander for about a year. And then I was like, hey, there's got to be like a faster, more fun way of actually doing this. I got fascinated by the whole power level aspect of it.
Yeah.
So, I started playing cEDH after that. And that was about 2 years ago. And I started playing cEDH, and I just went out to a store and was like, found some cEDH players and sat down, got my ass kicked, because I had no idea what the meta was like. I had no idea how the decks worked, But the casual mindset is so different than the cEDH mindset when it comes to actually playing the game.
Yeah.
In casual, you're sitting there doing your solitaire things. You're, expecting everybody gets to do their thing.
Yeah.
And, I just got absolutely trounced the first couple of times. So I was like, okay, how do I actually progress from there? So I met a local guy, Jason Baird, known as Nishrome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was like, dude, can you coach me? Can you teach me about the meta? Can you give me like this background information that I don't have? And he graciously accepted, and he took me under his wing and started coaching me. And the first thing that he told me was like, you need to start tracking your games. And the only option we had for doing that was basically Freedom Waffles, great spreadsheet for doing it. And so I started tracking my games in there, and I got to meet Freedom. I got to meet Waffle at a couple tournaments, and I was talking to him about the spreadsheet, and he was like, I'm actually not using it anymore because it didn't scale. Like he had 1,500 games in the spreadsheet at that point, and it was just noise. Like all the win rates were normalized, because that's what happens when you have so many games. It's like you need to lose like 200 games in a row for your win rate to basically move in any way. So, all that data just became less and less relevant. So I was like, dude, do you mind if I take a shot at this, with my tech background and just build something? And he was totally for it.
Sweet.
And so we just started building on this. We launched it about a year ago. It was in closed beta for like 3 to 4 months, where we had people like Waffle and, other people that were playing cEDH at a high level, testing it out and giving us feedback. And ultimately the tool was created just to make me better as a player. And then I realized, well, if it works for me, it's going to work for other people too, both people who are new to cEDH and, people who are actually established cEDH players. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great story. And most tools, I believe, are made because we find they're useful for us, right? It's not very often that we're going to be able to intuit what other people's problems are and how to solve them. It's usually something that is a personal thing that we want to solve. And then we find that there's this like continuity among other people who also share this similar problem. And that's the beauty of like a niche community like cEDH, is we all have the same problems. And so the tools we create often do work for a lot of different people,
Exactly. And I mean, coming from tech and having built like a ton of tech things and products and stuff like that over the years, if I'm building something in my spare time, something that I'm spending my precious nights and weekends on, it needs to be something that I'm super passionate about as well, and that I can use myself. I don't want to build a tool just for other people. I want to build something that I'm using so I can see whether it works and, make the tweaks necessary to make it work for me and make it work for other people. I think that's one of the things that made it successful, is that, I'm using it. I know what works. I know what doesn't work, so it's like, I'm not just building it for you guys to kind of figure out what you want to do with it yourself. It's like, I'm actually here doing the thing,
Yeah. I think it's awesome. It's very similar to the conversations I've had with Zethys, who I know integrates your, I'm not sure if it's your API. I don't know the tech terms, but I know that there's PlayNice data involved in Eldrazi Dev, and it's phenomenal. Like, I love to see when I'm doing mulligans with clients, how their hand is stacking up against a pod, and then you can go and look at hand data and say, oh, we kept this hand because we wanted to be somewhat responsible against a double turbo pod, and we needed to be, right? Like the Rog side did have a turn 2 Nas, or the Ral was going to go off. We needed to have that, snap back in our hand to be able to deal with that and then push with our Ristic. So having the integration between all these tools is, I think, just amazing. And the more we can do that in cEDH, I'm just a big believer of like, when the tide rises, all the boats do too, or whatever it is like that. And it sounds like, you benefited greatly from being able to push off of what Freedom Waffle had started and really continue this into a extremely developed, refined, and extremely useful tool, which I just think is awesome. So
and it's a tight-knit community of builders basically in the Magic the Gathering or TCG space. You have Zane from Top Deck, you have Zethys doing his Eldrazi Dev stuff, you have Ryan from EDH Top 16.
Absolutely.
And we all know each other, and we all talk. And we all try to figure out, okay, how can we actually integrate with each other to make everybody's products better? And what I love about the Eldrazi Dev Mulligan stuff is that it's getting opening hand data from PlayNice. And currently we have about 19,000 opening hands stored in our system. And so we basically give him like this anonymous data, but he gets the relevant information, like did this hand actually win?
Yes.
When did it win? Did it lose? Did it draw? What was the deck? All those things, which means that you can get these fairly realistic matchups when you're doing mulligan testing that you don't get if you're just using like, a regular like gold fishing program or Moxfield or anything like that. And that's what I like about his tool. I think it's really cool in that way. And, Top Deck, we've done a lot of work with Sane, and we have a Top Deck integration that I'll mention in a little bit more detail later. Stuff like that is fantastic. It's awesome to be working with these super cool, creative, technical people doing awesome stuff, and nobody's making money off of it. Everybody's like, they're all doing this out of, the love for the stuff that they're doing.
Totally. And I do think that is ultimately why we build the best tools, is because you love to do it. You love the community. Yeah. That's the thing I always come back to with cEDH is, I think Twitter is just hilarious. Like, I think it's really funny to watch it happen, because it's like this separate world where everyone thinks the sky is falling. And then in real life, all of cEDH is like a phenomenal community and a great game. And it feels like, you kind of enter into an echo chamber there. But in reality, it just feels amazing. Every tournament I go to, all the communication I have, everyone is so on the same page that we're all in a great spot. We all realize that we're a new format, right? Like cEDH and TDH being a competitive format in the past, I would really call it only a 3-year period, because Top Deck were on season 3. And, you know, of course there was TEDH before that, but not in any serious, like, uniform tournament structure way. I think we're doing great for a new format. And I'm pretty, like, bullish on the future that we have in front of us. There are obviously problems, but I don't think they're like, you know, sky is falling problems. It's very solvable stuff.
Definitely. And it's growing pains. It's like, you know, we don't have 20 years of legacy to look back on where, you know, we had a format run by a governing body that figured out, okay, this is how you do these things. It's like everybody's kind of just, you know, brainstorming with other people to figure out what's the correct way to do something. They test out some stuff. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah. I mean, I love going to tournaments.
Me too.
You know, I think they're a fantastic experience. And it's like, and it is such a change from the negativity that you see, particularly on Twitter, particularly from the fucking 1v1 players who take opportunity to shit on cEDH every time they can.
I love it, like, dude. I'm like, keep throwing, keep slinging it. Like, I just think it's hilarious to comment on something that you have no knowledge of. You know, some people play cEDH and be like, it's not for me. That's totally fine. The majority of people are commenting from, like, outside. They've never played the game, and they're like, this is a joke. And I'm like, sure, yeah. If you want to say that, that's totally fine. But anyways, we can't deviate too much. So we talked about how you found this tool specifically useful. I want to get into details around this. So as a cEDH player, there's a wide range of skill levels, obviously. There's people that are entering into the format who have just played casual, barely know the rules. Like me, when I started, I played no 60 card, right? So you don't really learn all the rules comprehensively when you're playing casual EDH. And then there's people who are super ingrained, you know, people who are winning tournaments, who are qualified for the Invitational, tournament grinders. I want to understand, like, across the spectrum, why is PlayNice actually useful? Because you talked about how you can track your games, you can look at mulligans, but I want to get into a little more depth and kind of understand how we go from early beginner skill level to the highly advanced skill level, and why it's useful across the spectrum.
The top level is basically that if you're a cEDH player, you should care about data. You know, and most don't, unfortunately. And it's one of the things where the 1v1 players really have us beat, is that 1v1 players are, you know, they love data analysis. And there's lots and lots of tools that allow them to track everything that's happening within the meta, what's performing, specific cards overperforming, underperforming. There's tons of articles out there. There's, you know, entire YouTube channels that are, you know, basically devoted to giving them this analysis part. Yeah. But cEDH players seem to have been content with basically just living in this gray space where it's like, oh, I think this works. Or,
it's all vibes.
You know, this doesn't work. Yeah, it's all vibes based. Exactly. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, you can actually look at the data. And I know that, you know, people like Data Talk has been doing great stuff and just kind of showcasing, for instance, you know, he's been posting about how Hexing Spellshare has been performing in decks. Yeah. And I find information like that, you know, incredibly useful, but he's just one person doing it, you know, and nobody else has actually taken this seriously. And most cEDH players, you know, they don't really look at it. They just go, okay, yeah, that's great. This card looks interesting. I'm going to play it. But then it's like, how do you actually test whether that card was good? Did it have an impact? Did you draw it? Did it win the game for you?
Did you tutor for it? Right.
Yeah. Did you tutor for it? You know, I think that's really relevant. Like, that's one of the criteria that I use myself when I'm testing out new cards, is that, am I actually tutoring for this card? Yeah. If I'm not tutoring for this card, it probably doesn't deserve to be in my deck.
Oh, yeah.
You know? That's like the top level line. The other line is that, you know, there's a huge difference between cEDH and EDH in general, is that we have a much smaller meta pool. You know, so we have much smaller deck diversity, which means you can actually learn to play better against specific decks. And you can't do that if you don't have the data that tells you why are you struggling to play against these decks. And that's what, you know, we're trying to solve with tools like PlayNice, because, you know, it's easy enough to be like, oh, I need to play a specific way against Blue Farm, but how do I play against Tiam? Or how do I play against the Helga deck that kicked my ass yesterday, where I was like, I don't know how to deal with this. What am I doing here? You know, so stuff like that. And, you know, that's where I think it really benefits, particularly the people who've been playing cEDH for a long time, because they can go back and they can start analyzing what are the decks that I'm actually struggling against, and what do I need to change to make sure that, you know, my win rate goes up against this specific deck and this specific deck, or this specific meta style, you know, that I'm just not used to playing against.
Absolutely.
And then for, you know, the new cEDH player, it's really more just a matter of getting used to tracking data, getting used to reading that data so you can learn to do better mulligans, you can learn to keep better opening hands. So you again can see, what are the good matchups against me? Because as you know, I mean, you're a very experienced tournament player, you mulligan differently depending on your pod composition, and you play differently depending on the composition as well. And if you don't have data telling you that you're doing this or that you're doing this wrong, it's never going to change.
Yeah, I oftentimes will ask people to track games because I want to know what the scenarios are they're actually in. A lot of people, when they start playing, I don't want to put them, I want to expose, or I don't want to expose them to too much complexity, because I find that if you put too many factors in at once, it's overwhelming. So if I'm like, okay, you need to understand what your deck does, what every other deck at the table does, when to interact, like, what state of the game you're in, how to threat assess, how to politic defensively and offensively. It's just too much. And so you can start at lower levels where you're just like, all right, in a vacuum, what is a good hand? Because you can just simplify it down. I think at the base level, you need to understand your micro before you can understand the entire macro of a game that's going on. And that's why Roxai, in my opinion, is one of the best decks to learn cEDH on. It's a very high ceiling deck. So obviously the best Roxai pilots are going to be taking it to levels that, beginners can't. But the nice thing about Roxai is, in some senses, you can play the deck and you can practice the deck very well on your own. You can go through your lines. You can understand how to win the game. You don't necessarily need other people at the table to be there. So you can just goldfish the deck quite a bit and become relatively aware of how you're supposed to play it.
Yeah.
Complexity is added when you start looking at pod compositions and you're like, oh, there is a Helga Stacks deck. And if there's a turn one Deafening Silence, how is that going to change my mulligan and play patterns? But initially, it is really, I think, quite powerful and useful for people to understand just how to win the game with their deck outside or in a vacuum, right? And as they grow and progress, they're like, okay, I'm feeling more confident. Like, I understand how to get to the finish line. Then you say, all right, let's throw in some of the obstacles, right? You have to play against other people now. There's counter spells flying around. There's stacks pieces you have to deal with. Now let's figure out how to adapt the understanding of how to win and let you go through the hurdles it's going to take to get there. So I do really find that Play Nice being able to not just have hands, but also to be at understanding, like, what were the pieces in the game that were really impactful, right? What were the cards that came up that changed how the game went? It helps you get a more full understanding of the game, rather than just, this is my pawn composition, this is the hand I kept, and I won or I lost.
Yeah.
So, okay. So just to recap then, for newer players, the value of Play Nice is really in understanding and tracking your games so that you can start using the data that we've seen 60 card players utilize very successfully for the history of Magic the Gathering. So we're just getting in the habit of tracking. We're understanding what decks we're winning against, what decks we're losing against. We're understanding what hands are good and not good. And then for the more advanced play group, it's a little more about getting into the fine details so they can break down what I like to call the 90 to 100% of their game. New players are like 1 to 90, very advanced. You go smaller percentage point changes and the details will matter a lot more. And so Play Nice has the data to really let you break down what those tiny percentage point changes in your game are that can make you go from good to even better.
Yeah. So the way that I usually say it is that, the more data you enter, the better Play Nice gets. It's one of those, it feeds off the data that you enter and it gives you stuff back. So, but as you become a better player, you should also become more selective in deciding what is the data that is actually relevant for me.
Yeah.
Because the more targeted data you have, the better the results are. I mean, it might feel like, oh, I need to track every single thing in the world to get the best data possible, but that's not necessarily true. There are certain things that I don't track on Play Nice because they're just not relevant to me. They don't give me any information. It just ends up being noise.
Gotcha.
So just keep that in mind as you start using Play Nice, is that it's great to enter a lot of stuff in the beginning, but then you start filtering it out as you get more experience as a player and as a user.
Gotcha.
And then the other thing that I would mention is just, turn it into a routine. Like, I have a specific routine that, I use with Play Nice, is that I always take a picture of my opening hand. Just do that on my phone before the game starts. And then when I'm playing locally with play groups that are also using it, our rule is that the winner gets to record the game and then the winner shares that game with everybody. So everybody gets, a picture of it. They get a copy of the game. And then when I'm at home after like a night, the next day, whatever, I enter my opening hand data and whatever notes that I might have that, I couldn't be bothered to enter at that point.
Gotcha.
So just make it a part of your routine, instead of being like, oh shit, I have to do it in this way and all that sort of stuff. And that's really the hardest part. It's just because it's another thing that you have to remember to do and all those sort of things, but it's worth it.
I agree. Yeah. I think one thing I'd also recommend, and something I tell people who have not used PlayNice or who have not tracked their games, is you don't have to do every game. Practicing and playing are different. Like, we're all here to play and have fun, but we're also here because we're competitive and we want to get better. And so in my opinion, it's like any skill. I play pickleball. That's like my physical competitive activity. And part of pickleball is just playing. Like, it's really, really fun to play, and you get better by just playing the game, but you get a lot better when you drill. And drilling is not as fun as playing, but it is super duper important, and it actually will improve your fundamentals immensely. And so you have to dedicate some time to practice and some time to play. And so what I'll tell clients is, I'm like, hey, if you're just starting, with something like Play Nice, just track 5 games a week. Just keep a little bit of data to get yourself in the habit. Make the task as easy as possible. Just like, starting any, new thing that's going to add some brain power or add something to your routine. You want to start as minimally as possible, like just go for the 5-minute run. Just go to the gym and be there for 10 minutes or whatever it might be. Yeah. And that way you get into the habit and you can see the payoff of doing it, right? Yeah. And so I just think starting small and then expanding that is really, really important too. And it's a good way to get into the habit of tracking your games. I think on that note,
exactly.
Do we want to jump into kind of looking at the site together and understanding it from a beginner perspective, and then maybe what it might look like on someone who is very deep into the site and understanding like how to track well?
That sounds great. So I have created a brand new Play Nice account here.
Sweet.
Yeah, so this is basically what you see after you've, registered, logged in, done whatever it is. The registration process is very, very simple. And, you basically just add your username, your, email address and all that sort of stuff. And this is where you end up afterwards. And don't skip over this page. This page is actually relevant. So I know you go here and like, great, I want to start using the system. I want to start doing things, but just, take a second to go through, add your pronouns if they're, relevant, add a little bio, start adding some social links if you want to, because they'll all show up in your profile. And then the most relevant thing here is your Top Deck profile link. So we have a really cool integration with Top Deck that we built with Sane, where basically if you have a Top Deck profile link in your Play Nice profile, we will automatically pull all the tournaments that you have registered for and all the tournaments that you have actually played. And we will create those games for you, so you can literally, once you played a tournament and you didn't record any of the games, once the tournament has been completed on Top Deck, you'll be able to just go in there, see the games, and import them directly into your Play Nice profile.
Gotcha.
This is something that we built about 3 to 4 months ago, and we already have like 12,000 Top Deck games in the system because of it. Yeah. So people really took to that.
Just to recap that, so you're saying like after the tournament, you will see your pod compositions automatically created in Play Nice.
Exactly. You'll literally get a notification in Play Nice saying, hey, this tournament has now been completed. It is ready to import. And you go into that page and you can just import the games.
Okay, sweet. And will it pull the deck lists from Top Deck? So you don't even need to track pod composition?
Nope, it pulls everything. I'll show you an example of it when I show you my profile later.
Sweet.
Yeah, and it pulls opponents as well and match them up to their Play Nice profile. So if you played against another Play Nice user, you will see that you played against that person, which is cool.
Very cool.
So anyway, so you do your thing in here, standard profile stuff. The other thing is, like it says here, once you're, all done with this profile stuff, you can go over to the dashboard and you can start adding some decks and games. So the most important thing in here is just, you kind of want to add your deck beforehand. It allows us to match it up with the Top Deck data, and it also creates, a nice way for you to see that the system is actually working.
Yeah.
So you can just copy in a Moxfield link. So I will copy in my Rockside list from Moxfield, and I have now added this deck.
Sweet.
And this is my Nauseating Stormageddon deck. And you can see that it actually pulls in the deck list from Moxfield as well, which means that we can do versions where you can be like, oh, I changed these 2 cards and I changed these 3 cards and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
But you have all the information in here. You have various options. If you want to keep this private, you don't want to share this with the world, you can archive it, you can hide deck stats and all those things.
Cool.
If you go to the decks page, you can see that this is now here as well. This is a free account, so you get a little ad telling you to upgrade at some point. And you can do the same thing for a couple different decks. But now that you have the deck in here, you can go to the add game page. And if you click here, you can see your deck is marked in green, and then it has basically every single commander pairing that exists, that are legal in Commander. Yeah. It's like I think 4,200, like a little over 4,000 pairings that are actually valid for, Commander games. It's a lot. And it gets updated every day. So whenever there are new cards coming out, so all the turtle stuff is in here, all those things. And then if you look at this, the stuff to the right, there's so many options. And that's kind of what I alluded to previously, is that this is a lot of options. And we have explanations on the site for what these options actually do. And a lot of them have like little tooltips that say, this is what this actually does. But it's still like a lot. It's a lot of data and it's a lot of things to actually keep track of.
Yeah.
So what I usually tell people is that just hit that customize button immediately and kind of go through these and be like, oh, I don't care about fun fact, or I really don't care about, I would have won on my next turn. That's fine. I can leave those without, stuff like that. Just kind of go in there, customize some things, save those settings, and then go back to the add game page and you start seeing, elements just kind of disappear.
Yeah.
Only the top stuff is really required. We need to have a venue. So there's a bunch of predefined venue, including, our friends over at Critical EDH.
Nice.
And you can obviously add your own just by typing them in. And I would suggest that you're specific. Try to add, if you're playing in a specific store, add the name of the store. That way we can match you up with other people who are also playing at the store and we get like nice venue stats instead of just doing like home or in person or LGS or, any of those things. Give us the name of the store. It's cool data.
Yeah.
You have stuff like your mulligan size. So if I actually pick this as my deck, I can now go in and actually select my opening hand cards. And this is based on the deck list that was pulled from Moxfield earlier. So you can only pick from the cards that are actually in that deck list.
Can you import the photo that you take and have picture recognition?
So we thought about this.
Yeah.
And the problem is that it would require us to store that photo that's coming from you on our server. And I don't trust people in the world to not upload shit that would get our account basically closed by Amazon.
Okay. Yeah. I don't either.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny. Yeah.
You know exactly which kind of pictures are going to show up basically 20 seconds after we implement this feature.
Yeah.
So no, we don't want that. So unfortunately, you still have to go through it and do it the old-fashioned way, just with a photo that you took on your phone, or if you wrote it down or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's fast enough. It generates the lands and opening hand thing, which is more geared towards casual players. It's not as relevant for cEDH players, so you can obviously turn that off. And then you have the usual stuff that whether it's a top deck tournament, league, online, all that things. Ending turn, win reason. This is copied directly from Freedom Waffle's old spreadsheet. So if you're using that, you know exactly how that works. The only thing that we added is win on top, because that is a very common win reason today.
Sure.
Where somebody's winning and then somebody else is boarding on top and just doing their thing. MVP cards for winning player. So even if you don't win the game, you should track this. You should be like, what card actually won the game for the person who won? Because it'll give you data in regards to, okay, which cards are actually screwing me over again and again from other players? Did the Tyon player play that turn one Deafening Silence that completely screwed your plan? Well, then Deafening Silence is the MVP for Tyon that, eventually won on turn 4.
Sure.
And it shouldn't be a win condition. That's one of the common mistakes that I see from people, is that they put like Underworld Breach, or they put like Thoracle in there.
MVP of this game.
Yeah, it's not. That's a win condition. That's what actually won. It's not what got you to the win. It could be a counterspell. It could be somebody is literally trying to stop you, and you happen to have the Redirect Lightning in hand, or you happen to have something else in hand. That would be your MVP.
Gotcha.
So you have all the win conditions down here. That's the Oracle, Underworld Breach are the two common ones, all the other stuff. And then basically just standard like EDH and cEDH combos, where you can kind of choose for yourself how you want to record it. Like just pick a lane when you set it up. Like, do you really care about knowing exactly which 2 or 3 specific cards are the one that won the game? Or do you just want to do Kinnan activations or Thrasios activations or whatever? Just be consistent about it, because that way you get consistent data.
Yeah.
So, but that's really, that's very much a personal preference. I know that there's some players who love writing out like every single card that actually won them the game.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that interesting.
Yeah.
So that's basically it. You add your first games, you start seeing the game data. So if I go to my profile, I have nothing here because I have added no games. But it starts popping up the moment you start adding new games, basically.
Sweet.
So that's what it looks like for a new player.
Can we get a view of what your PlayNice account looks like?
You can totally do.
Sweet. Okay. Real quick, I wanted to share a word from our sponsors for this episode, Gilded Goblet. If you're in need of proxies, Gilded Goblet is the place to go. This is a brand that I just co-launched, and I'm so pumped to be able to bring it to you. We offer custom decks, so you can pick the 100 cards that you want with the art you love. We also offer singles, sets, and pre-constructed cEDH decks if you're just browsing. Every order, no matter how small it is, has free shipping, no order minimums, just grab whatever you need and you'll get it ASAP. As a tournament grinder, the quality is top-notch, and these can be used in all proxy-friendly events. You can use code BITESIZE to get 10% off whenever you shop. Also, every Wednesday at 10:30, when we release a new bite-sized video, Gilded Goblet will run an additional sale, so just keep that in mind whenever you're shopping. You can check the link in the description and go get yourself some proxies. All right, let's get back to the video.
There's going to be some data in there. I can guarantee that.
I like all your memes too, by the way.
Yeah. So this is my PlayNice account.
Yeah.
So you can see I have 903 games in there. So
yeah.
I have a good chunk of games. You can see I'm right now in a bit of a slide where I've been losing some games lately here.
Freaking Helga decks, dude.
Exactly. Just
Time and Helga everywhere, ruining your deck.
So many, dude. You can see my local meta. I think I have 200 games against Time.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh, I would quit.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, so this is just what the dashboard actually looks like when you do have data. You know, it shows your decks. It shows like the most winning game, the most played deck. You know, all that sort of stuff. And then if you go to the profile and stats, that's when you actually start seeing the statistic that PlayNice generates.
Interesting. Okay.
And so, this again is completely customizable. You know, when you turn off things inside the game settings page that I showed earlier, it also turns off stats here, which means that you can remove noise from things that you don't think are relevant.
Okay. So walk me through the stat dashboard. What are, in your opinion, I mean, I guess for you, what's your most important things that you're trying to pay attention to, right? Because part of any tracking thing is A, you want to track, and then B, you want to analyze the data that you're tracking so you can get actual meaningful, information and trends that are going to occur over and over again. So when you're looking at data, what's your routine with it? How often are you really like understanding and going back and looking? And then what are the things that you're really paying attention to? And what are some of the things that maybe you're like, this is useful, but it's not something I necessarily am going to have to check out every single time I look at this dashboard?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there are also some stats that are very deck specific, where they're good for specific decks, and then they're less good for Rockside, for instance. So one of the things that I use a lot in here is the data insights, which we just built, which was kind of a way to bubble up data from some of the individual graphs into doing my more like cross data analysis. So for instance, this one over here, the one that says to the very right, that says pace shift getting faster. Well, it's showing me that, games are getting faster. It's showing me that meta has shifted into more of a turbo meta because my, all-time turn average is, game ended on turn 4. But recently, basically within like the last 2 to 3 months, it's been going down to 3.6. So games are getting closer to ending on turn 3 as opposed to them ending on turn 4. So I think stuff like that is interesting because, again, it impacts how you play. If you know that there's never going to be a turn 4, great. My window is turn 2 and 3 now. That's it. I'm just not getting past that. The other stuff is, basically some of this is not so relevant. The lucky number, the multi 7. Yeah, most people who multiple 7 have a higher win rate when they actually manage to keep one of their first 2. Yeah. It's showing me stuff that is relevant to Rockside, like the quick kills and the long game, number 2 and number 3 over here is that, it's showing me that when the game gets longer, I'm winning after other players. So it's like, which is interesting for a Rockside player because you're either winning first, which is what the quick kills is showing me, or you're actually in the spot where, okay, you got stopped, and then somebody else is probably going to get stopped, and then it's your turn to win again. Right. Because at that point, people are out of interaction. So that's what this data is telling me. Yeah. So I think the insights are interesting and just kind of bubbling up things and saying, okay, this is actually what's going on with your games like right now.
Yeah. Can I click into insights to understand them more deeply?
No, this is something I literally just built this a month ago.
No worries.
So,
Cool. Awesome.
No, I want to add. I want to add like an explanation to them. Actually, show this is how this is calculated. This is what this means. You know? So that's going to be step 2.
Cool.
The other thing that is also relatively new is this like win, loss, draw over time, which kind of answers the question that I mentioned earlier in regards to Freedom Waffle spreadsheet and the problem with tracking a lot of games is that if you're just doing win rates based on games, it just normalizes. It's like you hit 1,000 games, your win rate never changes anymore.
Yeah.
So this, is a bit more useful because it actually shows you over time. So based on the number of games you have, it'll create time intervals that match how you play. I play a lot, so it's doing it monthly for me, where it can show you where I'm kind of going. The orange line is wins, the red line is losses, and the gray line at the bottom is draws. And then it's showing me my current all-time win rate in this salmon color behind it, so I can see how everything corresponds to that. So this is kind of showing me, what am I doing right now? So right now I'm on a losing streak, which is why the red line is above the orange line. And be like, okay, shit, what's going on? And I kind of need to start analyzing and figuring out what's actually happening. Why am I consistently losing more games right now than I have been in the past?
Sure. Gotcha.
Then down here you have the matchups, which basically just tells you which matchups do you do well against and which don't you do well against. We again bubble up the insights up here. My arch nemesis is Sada, which I have a really good Sada pilot locally, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah. So I have a 28% loss rate against the Sada.
Wow.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I have an 80% win rate against Selvala, so
nice.
I'm not so worried when that pops up in the pod. But yeah, that's what this is telling you. This is basically just matchup data. Just what decks do you play well against, and which decks don't you play well against? Seed position by frequency. It's interesting to look at, but we all know what it's going to say. It's going to say, there's a 20% win discrepancy between first seed and fourth seed. Yeah, that's about right.
Which is crazy. So but
it's nuts.
Problem for another time.
Exactly, but that's how it is.
Yeah.
But here, so this one is new as well. So this is a combo graph as well. The mulligan and seat position by wins, loss, draws. So it tells you how your mulligans and your seat position actually correspond. So for instance, if I'm in first seat, mulling to 7, my win rate is insane, 78.13%.
Wow. And
then it just starts growing as I'm mulliganing lower in first seat. If I'm coming down with a 4 seat, if I'm doing 4 cards, my mulligan's 4 cards in first seat, my win rate drops all the way down to 25%.
Yeah.
So I think this is interesting, but there's not much you can do about it, apart from perhaps focusing on you need to be, mulligan better. But,
right.
You can't do that.
Don't shuffle 4.
Yeah, exactly. Don't multi 4 and you're going to have a higher win rate. So it's more one of those that are interesting to look at and gives you some data, but it's not really actionable. But the next section is, so this is the opening hand data. And I do think opening hands are really, really relevant to store because they give us direct insights into your thinking when you're actually playing the games.
Sure.
So we have the most frequent cards, the cards by performance, and then the cards by card score. So the card score is basically an algorithm, like a Wilson weighted algorithm behind the scenes that can, weigh it on sample sizes, win rates and all those sort of things.
Sure.
And there's a little consistency indicator next to it, which is these 3 dots. And if they're faded out, that means that, the variance, the statistical probability of it is lower. We're not as certain that this is actually a valid result.
Sure.
But you can see Ristic Study, 66.8 score above everything else. Yes, that is a fantastic card to have in your opening hand. I win a lot when I have that in my opening hand. So that's, basically what these are telling us. It's like, these are the kind of cards that you should be keeping. These are the cards that give you the wins when you actually have them in your opening hand, and you can kind of convert from there.
Gotcha.
But what's interesting about this is, this is also something we talked about previously, is that, Roxai is a fast deck. It needs to win fast, which means that the opening hand data here is much less varied than it would be if I was playing like a mid-range deck.
Sure.
Because if you're playing a mid-range deck, especially if you're playing something like, not the turbo version of Blue Farm, but like the more mid-range version of Blue Farm, you'll see stuff like Esper Sentinel. You'll see stuff like, the smaller value pieces. You'll see more lands. You'll see, other things like that. Whereas if you're looking at data from Rockside decks, you're going to see pretty much the same cards, because this is the kind of shit that we want to see in our opening hands.
It is interesting to me that your most frequent cards and cards by card score across all categories, you do not see Necropotence or Ad Nauseam. Do you know why that is?
I usually don't end up with Necro in my opening hands.
Sure.
For some weird reason. I'm sure it's in here. If I go down, let's see. Oh, sorry. This actually has Blue Farm data in here.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, surely Necropotence would be one of your best cards.
There you go.
Yeah, so we see a lot of tutors.
Imp Seal that gets me the Imp Seal that gets me the Necropotence with the Dark Red.
Gotcha. Okay. Is the gold standard, is that different than what we were seeing before? Yes. Okay. Is that just based on your customization?
No, so the gold standard is only relevant when you're filtered by a specific deck. So that's what I did up here, because now...
Understood.
So up here, if I turn off the filters, then I'm basically looking at, the three decks that I have. I have 34 games on Obnixilis, I have a couple of 100 games on Blue Farm, and then I have 640 on Roxai.
Sure.
So for that, we can't do the gold standard because they're cards spread from across different decks. So when you actually filter by a deck or you go to the individual deck page, we show you the gold standard, which is basically the God hand. It's like, if you have this, if these are the 7 cards that you keep in your opening hand, and then you draw the Ristic Study, you are winning that game.
Yeah.
your win rate is the highest it's ever going to be.
Sure.
So, but
this hand, great. So understanding this is a Ristic Study first draw. Understood. Gotcha. Yeah.
Exactly.
And still fascinating though, right? Because it's like, we're not seeing like, if my first draw is a Necropotence or a Nas, like that's going to be better. But you could see your Imp Seal is probably getting, one of those cards most likely to win on turn 2 with protection.
Yeah.
That's like the gold standard of Roxai, right? Turn 2, win with protection, or set up yourself for an unbeatable turn 3 win.
Yeah. And it also tells you about how you're actually mulliganing and what you're considering to be important, because there are differences between players. It's like, I love seeing a turn 1 Ristic Study. I love seeing, a turn 1 Necro. But for instance, I was looking at Dexter, who's a very, very good Rockside pilot, his data the other day, and he has Necropotence in his gold standard, which shows me that he's probably mulliganing harder for Necropotence than I am. That I'm okay with just being like, I got the Ristic Study, that's fine, or I got me something that can get me the Ristic Study or the Necro. Sure. Whereas he's legitimately trying to make sure he has a Necropotence in his opening hand. So that's what the data tells us when we're actually looking at different players who are playing the same deck.
Understood. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
One thing I think is cool, and this is still like a work in progress, it's this trap cards section that I just added. And it was because I had a suspicion that keeping wheels in opening hands in Roxai was hurting me more in my win rate compared to, not trying to wheel early. And so I built this algorithm here that basically tells me, yes, you are correct. If you're in seat 3, you're casting a Windfall, you are the one that is most likely going to get screwed here.
Sure.
Because the other people are going to untap with the 7 cards, and they're going to get to do their thing before you actually do. That you're just not converting enough when you're actually keeping opening hands that have Windfall, Time Twister, whatever it is, and casting it super early. So these are cards that, look good in your opening hand, but you should be very about keeping them because they actually negatively impact your win rate.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes total sense. I think that's a cool category too.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's deck specific. You have to be on a deck to actually look at this and have it make sense, because otherwise it's just going to pull cards from multiple decks. And this is just to break down like cards by card type, based on what you keep in your hands, what's the top performer, all that sort of stuff. So ending turn and venues. Venues is just for fun. It's just so you can see where am I actually playing. These are my local game stores. I play there a lot. Ending turn, it's something that people focus a lot on when they look at the data. And I don't really think it's super, super relevant. Because, it's telling me that, I have 100% win rate on turn 1. Great. But it's not like I can, what am I going to do with that data? It's one of those where I want to track it and I want to show it to people just so they have an idea of what's actually going on here. And it reinforces my belief that, Roxai is a turbo deck and he really wants to win in turn 2 and 3.
Turn 1 wins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, keep turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. That's great. Those are my sweet spots. But it doesn't really give you that much, relevant data. But I think it's fun to look at. So that's kind of why it's in there.
Yeah.
Then we have the local meta, and I like this one. So this is based on basically all the people that you play with. So it generates composites for, what does your local meta look like? And as you can see, my local meta is pretty wonky. Got some Minsk, got some Inala, got some Tameshi, Sada, all that sort of stuff until I get down to like Tighnacrom and that sort of things. And then over here, you have it on the right, you have it by meta size. So, Roxai is the largest part of my local meta because I play Roxai a lot. And then you have Blue Farmkin and Tyam. You can see the Tyam that I spoke about earlier, Dimithras. I have a player playing Wheeliod with Vivi, etc. And it just tells you what your local meta looks like, what are the decks that you play against the most, and what your win rates are against these specific decks in your local meta.
Sweet. Yeah, I think this is great.
That's cool.
It's nice to know, like, I imagine too, if I go into tournament settings, I could look at the meta composition comparatively to my local meta and understand if I'm doing better or worse, right? Like, in your local meta, because we have a lot of, more niche decks, like decks you're not going to see in the wild as much, it may actually impact how you're playing and how you're practicing, more importantly. Then you go into a tournament setting and you see a lot of the meta decks and you're like, oh, I'm trouncing these meta decks, right? Because I don't have to worry about like random stuff popping up or like weird interactions happening. Yeah, so that's really interesting.
And it's also, it also ties into the meta opponents thing. And this was really built just so we can make fun of each other.
Nice.
We could look at our friends and be like, dude, I have an 80% win rate against you. You should play better. You should shuffle better. Stuff like that. But yeah, so this is just like other Play Nice users, people I play against in tournaments, pop up here so we can kind of see just who I like playing against and things like that.
Sweet.
The rest of the stuff, so one of the things I also mentioned earlier is that I think the common win conditions and common MVP cards could be really interesting, but it's so deck dependent. And they're just not that interested in Roxai. Because it's like, I know how I win in Roxai. I win through Breach with Oracle. Those are literally my, win conditions.
Yeah.
And for the MVP cards, it's pretty much always going to be like Adnos, Rhystic, Necropotence, Mystic Remora. It's going to be those things. Whereas with decks, like you mentioned earlier, that, play more of the mid-range game or, play a lot, has a bit more deck diversity than Roxai has, I think this can actually tell you a lot more about what's going on, especially like the MVP cards thing. Like, what cards are you actually losing to? Which cards are the MVPs for you when you're winning, or which cards are the MVPs for other people. Yeah. But here it gets kind of skewed because, Roxai is so compact in regards to its win conditions.
The common MVP cards among all players is, what's the data pool for this? Is this everyone you've played against as well?
Yes. So this is literally, so the difference is on the left, it's only you. So only when you won the game. But on the right, it's when anybody won the game.
Okay. Understood. Yeah.
So you can see that's why I have like Tyam loops in here and Tameshi loops and Malcolm Clint Horn Buccaneers and things like that.
Gotcha. That makes total sense.
So that's kind of that. That's like the big overview of the profile page. And what's cool about it is that if you go to the decks pages and you click on a deck, then you get access to all the same data, but it's now filtered specifically by that deck.
Very cool. Yeah. One question I'm curious about, actually two things. I wanted to start off with this because I had an idea and I'm curious if it's something you were interested in implementing. But one thing that people love, and this is, in my opinion, kind of an outlier in terms of interest, is people love data when it's very specific to them. If you think about like a Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year, everyone wants to know what their Spotify Wrapped like. It looks like they're like, what did I listen to? What were my, my favorite artists? What was my most played songs? And I'm curious if you have any ideas around having sort of like a Play Nice Wrapped where I could see, common points and very digestible data that is presented to me in a way where it's like, oh, here's my weekly recap, or here's my monthly or yearly recap, and having that be something that people could share on social media and be like, oh, look, like my win rate over time got better. My mulligans have become more consistently high. Like my deck, stats on Roxai versus Blue Farm, this is what it looks like, right? I'm just curious if that's something that you've thought about. And it looks like you have some with the insights, but yeah.
Yes, exactly. And we really wanted it to do it for this year, but we just didn't have time to get it done. Yeah. That was a problem. Totally. But I love the idea of doing this wrapped. I mean, one of the things that we've really been focusing on lately is that we now have a year's worth of data. The site has been out for a year, so we're beginning to see how people are using the site. We're beginning to see what kind of data we're getting. And then we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this more digestible? How do we create like these bite-sized insights that you can actually use? How do we bubble up data so it's not just like, straight data points that tell you, okay, you have lost in seat 3 204 times. And doing like the Play Nice wrap is definitely part of that, and we're 100% doing it for next year. I think it would be really cool.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. I love bite-sized data.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing I'm curious about is there a way to see, like, I'm trying to think about how to word this, everybody's stats, where I could see something where every single user in Play Nice, I get to see like a social feed almost of awesome. Yeah, a meta. This looks great. Yeah, these are looking like, decks, what's winning, what's not winning. And then additionally, like, hands that are winning consistently across different decks and different users. Yeah, this is really cool. Sweet.
Yeah, so we later, I think once we hit like 30,000 games, we have about 59,512 games in Play Nice right now.
Nice.
So once we hit like 20 or 30,000, we're like, okay, it is time to build a meta. It's time to actually take the data that's coming from all these Play Nice users and try to put that together so we can be like, this is actually what's going on. Mm-hmm. So we've been steadily adding to that, over, the last 6 months. So of course we have like the most winning decks, and this can be filtered by all time and last month, because we do get enough data where last month is actually relevant. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, I think for Blue Farm, we had 1,700 games added last month.
Wow.
That is enough data to actually give us, that's enough for us to do something with that data. Mm-hmm. So we're doing that for pretty much everything. So you can see the most winning decks, most winning tournament decks, most popular decks, Blue Farm's on top for everything. Mm-hmm. And these change, that's what the arrows signify.
Very
so
cool.
compared to like 3 days ago, because that's the data that it's changing, you can see stuff is going up, stuff is going down based on, what's actually happening in the meta right now.
Yeah.
And all time, you can also see that stuff is going down. You see Dargo Thrasios seem popular right now for some weird reason, but it is. People are bringing it to tournaments and they're actually winning with it, which is kind of nuts.
Where's Ragashy is my question.
I think you need a little bit more games.
It's too small a sample size.
I saw it popped up. I think it was down at like 24, 25 or something like that in the list. Yeah, so it's not showing that.
Yeah.
And then down here, we do like a little leaderboard thing where, we actually do pull in real Play Nice users and kind of show the stats from some of these people, who's playing in the most in tournaments, who's really grinding, who are adding, the most opening hands, who are sharing games, highest win rate. You got some people here with, insane win rates.
Wow.
It's like 63.33. And it filters out. This is not people who had like 3 games and won them all. This is people who had like, 40 games and have a 63% win rate. So, stuff like that is fun to bubble up. Mm-hmm. And then we have the little circles here, which is basically just a breakdown of all the stats, mulligan sizes, ending turns. We can see how they're changing, how many tournament games we hear, how many tournament games people are adding. Mm-hmm. And then we have, the real meat, which is the seat position and the tournament seat position. And it's just miserable. Look at these draw rates. Jesus Christ.
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, actually, just out of curiosity, I've been chatting about this post-Envy, and the two biggest, in my opinion, like the two biggest complaints that we have in cEDH right now is about the draw problem and the seat disparity problem. Would you agree? Like, do you think there's anything else that like reaches the, a level of those issues? Okay. Yeah. No. And there's a lot of workshopping of ideas and solutions. Some people, and for somewhat, I agree. Like they're like, we're playing a super new format, so we're gonna have these issues, and it's just part of the game. B, it's a 4-player format, so having draw be a natural conclusion of a game is actually, that does make sense. Like you compare it to chess, and you look at the top level of chess, and the games, if played perfectly, will end in draws quite a lot of the time. And so, who knows if it can be fixed, right? But we at least can try solutions. I think that there's reason enough to be willing to implement some things. And I'm just curious from your perspective, the two ideas that I've heard be interesting and probably things we could try is for the draw problem, or I don't even know if you want to call it a problem, but for the high amount of draws, there's tournament structure changes that could occur. The idea would be that, let's say in a 60-player tournament, the first people that could get to 2 wins are taken out of Swiss, and they're put immediately into the top 16. And the top 16 would fill out with all those people that get to 2 wins. And as soon as that 2 wins are filled for the top 16, the Swiss rounds would end and the top 16 would start. So this essentially incentivizes people to draw less because there are potentially less rounds for you to get wins. And at the end of the day, the draws don't do as much because they're not putting you into top 16. You actually have to win games to get there.
Yeah.
Now, I think there are still some issues with this. Like, let's say we get to round 5 and there's, 13 people already in top 16 from rounds 1 through 4. And then in round 5, 6 people win a game. What do you do, right? Because that's like 19 people who have 2 wins. Like, how do we figure out who's in and who's not in? And then there's some other issues with that, but it's one of the solutions that I thought could be interesting to kind of deal with all the amount of draws that are happening. And then for seat disparity, we were just thinking, why don't we just try having first and second seat not draw a card and third and fourth seat draw a card and see if that changes the numbers at all. So I'm just curious to float those two by you and see what you think.
Yeah, so let's talk about the last one first, because that's the easy one. So I like the idea of the scry, doing the scry, doing the not drawn first seat and that sort of stuff. And so it's basically progressively better as you get to the lower seats. And I think people should just try it out. Just do a tournament, do a large tournament, try it out, see what actually happens, get some data from that, listen to people's experiences, because it's a relatively small change, So I think that's great. I don't know how much it's going to change, but it's definitely going to change. I mean,
who knows?
I keep no land hands in Rogside when I'm in first seat, because of course I assume I'm going to draw a land out of the 23 I have in my deck. If you made this change, I would not be doing that anymore.
That's
so I think that's totally fair, and I think that's a good thing. The other one in regards to the draw disparity is a lot harder because the math just doesn't math. And it's kind of what you touched upon yourself. It's like, okay, you have 13 players in top 16 going into the last round. 6 players win their, the fifth round. And now you suddenly have the 19 players for top 16 and you're screwed. And it's like, how do you actually do that? Because if you look at tournaments, particularly large tournaments, you could look at like the Rumble, the recent Rumble, or, the one that was in Ohio this weekend, for instance. People who are in top 16 generally for tournaments that are above 200 players usually have between 15 and 20 points. So that's kind of, if you look at it, the cutoff is usually around 15, 16, something like that.
7 rounds, like big tournaments, 7-round tournaments.
Yeah, 6 or 7 rounds. Like the Rumble or like the Ohio tournament this weekend. That's where you see, and you can't get to those numbers if by just winning. You need like a draw in there. You need something that actually pushes you past that. Like if you win 4 rounds out of 7, great. You are pretty much guaranteed for top 16. It's going to be very hard for you not to be. But the round, you just can't get the round numbers that you need in order to do something. That's the problem. The variation on sizes and number of pods in tournaments is just too hard. You can't be like, okay, if a tournament is 64 people, then you need 2 wins to get into top 16, because it's not going to work out for you that way. You're never going to end up in that situation where you actually have a perfect 16 players for the top 16. Right. It just doesn't work, unfortunately.
Yeah. So that's fair. That's fair. I mean, do you have any ideas for solutions? Again, I think that this is an interesting topic, and I've talked about it ad nauseum with a lot of people, but I'm always just curious to hear people's perspective on this. And if there's anything aside from, in my opinion, the best solution, which is player behavior change. As players, we need to change how we think about draws. Like if you have a chance to win a game, do not just auto default to draw just because you're in a slightly worse position.
I think the biggest issue, and the reason that we see like the draw meta, has been happening over, the last 6 months or whatever, and it's much more of a problem now than it was previously, is that I think there are 2 reasons. The reason is, they banned our fast mana. That sucks. I know. I still want crit back. Please give me crit back. Yeah. I don't know. I love Dockside and Rogside, but it's like,
hey, there's less draws than Dockside in the format.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. So, I mean, it's harder to push a win now because you lost, some tools that really enabled you to do quick wins.
Yeah.
The second thing is it also feels like there's been a shift in player mentality when it comes to draws. That
big time, yeah.
Previously, people were like, they were very hesitant to try to draw. They were like, I'm actually, I'm here to win. I'm going to try to win. If I get stopped, somebody else wins, that's fine. I can live with that. I can live with the loss. But these days, people seem like they're so scared of losing a game that, they basically mulligan for the draw, no matter what their seat position is. It's like once they've gone past like the first and second 7 and they start mulliganing down, they're like, oh shit, I need to just be mulliganing for a draw right now because otherwise I'm going to lose the game.
Yeah.
And people need to stop doing that shit. Like legitimately, you paid the fee to go to a tournament. Like you were there, you had travel costs, you had whatever. It's taking time out of your busy life. Play to win. Like, go into every game with the mentality that I'm going to try to win this game, and if people actually started doing that and people actually started sitting down at tables and saying, I am not accepting a draw. I'm not taking a draw. Don't mulligan for a draw. I am not going to take it. And then they actually do that. I think we're going to start seeing a shift. I think that's one of the things that we need to do as a collective player base is just stop normalizing draws.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. It's difficult in execution. In theory, I think it does make sense. But, I'm sure we'll both be in games, right, where we're like, okay, there's obviously especially in the flash speed world where it's like, okay, everyone is on at flash, right? Like someone is probably going to win this game. I have the last piece of interaction. Like, am I just going to king make someone, right? You get into a little more complexity, but I do agree that it's a player mentality shift that's going to occur, which will stop as many of the draws from happening.
Yeah.
And, who knows? I think that there's worlds where even if that, tournament structure suggestion I made isn't viable, there might be others that could be potentially more viable. Who knows, like what that ends up looking like, right? But again, I think
I think it's really also important for people to realize that draws are a natural part of the game. They happen. They will happen. There's no way to remove draws from the game. It just doesn't work. You're going to have draws where people go to time, and that's just how it's going to be. So it's like, but if you can minimize the games where it's obvious that everybody's basically just trying to force a draw straight from the beginning, I think the meta becomes a lot healthier and the tournament scene becomes a lot healthier.
I agree. I mulled a 1 yesterday, and I kept a Mystic Remora. It was really fun. Never drew land.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask, did you actually top deck the land?
No, I played Rograk. That was my game action. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the podcast here, and I'm curious, and I'd love to know, in 5 years, what does Play Nice look like? What are the aspirations and dreams that you hope that this can get to? What is like the potentially solved version of this tool?
Ooh, 5 years. That's a long time. Okay,
we could go 1 or 2.
Okay, let's go. Let's go 1. I think we have some real opportunities to kind of improve the coaching aspect of it.
Yeah.
So start building like coaching dashboards where you can keep track of multiple players and it shows you like a nice overview of what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're brewing right now, is just trying to do that. We want to build Teams functionality. We're actually a sponsor of Monolith now.
Nice.
And so we're using them as our guinea pigs to kind of build some team functionality that allows them to have like internal leaderboards and stuff like that when they're doing all their practice games and all their internal stuff where they can see how the internal Monolith players are actually stacking up against each other.
Sure.
We also want to do venue metadata just to kind of expand the social aspect of it. So I'll be able to click on a specific store or whatever and actually see the people who are playing at that store and what that meta looks like. So
love that.
Let's say that you're traveling to, somewhere and there are a couple stores where cEDH players go. You can go and Play Nice. You can check it out and be like, shit, I'm going to run into 18 stack sticks if I go here.
A lot of Zada.
Yeah. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to take my business, but stuff like that. And then of course we want to build a native app just so we have it on our phones and that sort of thing.
Sweet.
But I think there's I feel like we're very much in the early stages of what we can do with this service. Like, tracking this data is the critical thing. Is like we want as much data as possible because it gives us opportunities to figure out what do we want to do with this data afterwards. Like, what are the interesting things that we can learn from this data? What are the correlations that we can create? What's the cross data analysis that we can do? And this is what we're beginning to get into, like, a year later, a year after the launch, is that we actually have enough data to start figuring out how can we make these tools better, and then continue to listen to feedback from users who are like, oh, I'd love to see this. I'd love to track this. What do you think about doing this? And just expanding the site based on that. So
love it.
Those are kind of the plans that we have. I think the coaching and the teams aspect is super interesting, and I really want to work on that.
Yeah, well, let's definitely, please let me know if you need any insight or help.
No, I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to talk to Ian as well and stuff like that. People who I know that, do a lot of coaching are going to be the beta testers for all this stuff.
That'd be sweet. I would love to do that kind of work with you. I think that that's extremely needed. And I think coaching is also, we're kind of in the wild west of like what it looks like to do coaching. And I've done it like just a ton of learning around what it should look like for me and what people want. And so it's been really exciting to do coaching, and using Play Nice as a tool for that, just like Eldrazi Dev, has been extremely useful. So I think coaches and tools have a lot of functionality together. In addition, I think regionality and understanding what that looks like is so cool. I mean, we could really say, like, what's the best state for cEDH? You know, who is really competitive, who are, you know, we get some insights into that when we look at invitationals, and you see, like, oh, you know, how many of this region made it, how many of that region did, you know, what were the win rates like? But that just sounds phenomenal. And I do believe, like, having a easily utilizable data driven machine around cEDH makes more informed decisions, makes the format better, helps us understand where speed bumps are and where problem areas we want to focus on are at, and also just makes it a lot more fun to look at the format as a whole, which, by the way, is super new and requires a lot of beta testing on its own. So
of course. And also, just to answer your question, it's Illinois, of course.
It's Illinois. Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I thought it was California this whole time.
No. just putting that out there.
Yeah.
Everybody knows.
I guess we'll see soon.
Even the Ohio people know that it's Illinois.
Yeah. So. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, I'm pumped. I am just so thrilled with where cEDH is at right now. I have such a bullish outlook on how the game and format's developing. The community is amazing. The tools are so good. And they're really, you know, the nice thing is, like, you guys really care about the tools deeply. And like you said, there's not money in it right now. There's not really money in cEDH, and that's okay. No. I think we're building a strong foundation for the boom that is coming when all the casual players decide that cEDH is actually more fun than casual EDH.
Yeah, definitely. It will definitely happen.
Sweet. Okay. Anything else we want to touch on, or anything we missed? Anything we want to plug aside from Play Nice that might be going on or that you're working on personally?
No, I just want to say, support the Magic the Gathering tools. It's like, you know, support us by using it. You know, use Play Nice, use Eldrazi Dev, use Top Deck, use EDH Top 16. You know, use all the tools that you actually have available to you in your quest to become a better cEDH player, because they work. You know, there's a reason we built them, is because they actually do something. Yeah. So just, you know, I know it's extra work or whatever it is, but just do it. You will thank me later.
Yeah, so try a little bit at a time, right? Like, figure out how to build it into your practice routine, and it's immensely helpful. Yeah, sweet. Yeah. Okay, well, Michael, thank you so much for joining me. I had a really awesome time in this conversation. I'm sure we can get part 2 in the books and go over some, you know, any new changes that end up coming up.
Definitely.
And really get into what it looks like. Maybe once the coaching dashboard is a little more set up, going over what that looks like too. And the team stuff. I think that's also super exciting. So again, thank you for joining me, and thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any questions about this episode, about Play Nice, feel free to leave them in the comments. If people want to reach out to you directly, Michael, should they just go to your Discord, or is there an email they should reach out to?
Just hit me up on Discord. I'm there. I'm available. You can always ping me for stuff.
Sweet. Okay. All right. Well, thanks again for watching. Thanks for joining me, Michael, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Huge thanks to Michael for joining me on this week's episode. It was great to hear his perspective about how to use Play Nice and why someone might want to get into using it for cEDH. Now let's jump into this week's giveaway. All you have to do is be a subscriber of Bite Size and comment Play Nice on this week's video. You'll be entered into a free giveaway to win a proxy deck from Gilded Goblet.
Reach out to me if you're interested in cEDH coaching. I won last year's Invitational, and I'm currently ranked top 5 on the leaderboard this year. I've been working with coaching clients on one-to-one personalized plans where we diagnose what they're working on, their struggles, their goals, and help them reach them. In addition, we're also doing spell table coaching sessions so that we can watch you play and give you direct feedback on your game. If you're interested in coaching, reach out to me on Discord. It's at bitesize_snack, or leave a comment on this video. We'll reach out to you. Huge thanks to all the patrons of Bite Sized. You guys are the best. You help us make videos that we wouldn't make otherwise. You're contributing to the channel, and you're part of the direction of Bite Size Magic. Especially big thanks to our Jumbo patrons, Candy Diabetes, Nick Ray, and Sharticus. You guys are awesome. If anyone is interested in joining the Patreon, you can check it out at the link below. Helps us support us just a little bit more, and you get a bunch of really cool perks, so go check that out.
That's it for this week's video. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate you loads. Hope you enjoyed this week's video, and we'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.